So it's finally happening. Since the new year of the church began in Advent, we have celebrated Jesus' birth and his baptism, and we remembered how he gathered his disciples, and now he is finally beginning his ministry. What does Jesus do once he steps into his public role as a rabbi? What happens in this scripture passage from the Gospel of Mark? How does he begin? I'm really asking. What did you hear? He listens, he heals somebody. Come on, reading comprehension, listening comprehension, right? So he teaches with authority in the synagogue in a way that astounds people. Somehow he seems to have more authority than the teachers that they're used to. He rebukes an unclean spirit, and then he heals Simon's mother-in-law of a fever. It's like a lot to do in one day. He preaches and he heals both body and spirit, and soon Jesus is surrounded by people. Those who are sick or possessed by demons, those who are curious to hear what he has to say. By nightfall on that day, the whole city is gathered around the door of the house where Jesus has come to visit. It was an exhausting day, I imagine. And early the next morning, Jesus gets up while it is still dark and goes out to a deserted place alone to pray. But the scripture passage says that Simon and the other disciples hunt him down. They find him quickly, saying, "Everyone is looking for you." I imagine Jesus taking a long, slow breath. And then he says, "Let us go to the neighboring towns so that I may proclaim the message there also. For that is what I came to do." So he's going to go and do the same thing again in the new place. So Jesus has just begun his ministry, and on day one, he makes a name for himself. There is something so remarkable about how Jesus takes the tradition that he has received and makes it come alive for people through his words and actions. He's changing lives, and people take notice right away. But perhaps we should pause a bit here. I'm guessing that at least a few people in the room have some questions about all those mentions of demons in the text. Anyone notice that?
Yes.
Or think it was strange?
And he knew them.
And he knew them.
Yes.
Yeah. They knew him. Yeah. Interpreting biblical stories about healings is very difficult for us. Physical illnesses, mental illnesses, disability, health, medical care, all of these things were understood so differently in Jesus' time and place than they are now. We're going to explore this topic a little bit more during the season of Lent. It's too much for me to unpack right now. But for now, I hope you can set aside temporarily your initial reaction to the idea of demons. It's a great question. It might be a distraction because there's something I don't want you to miss about this passage, which makes it clear that Jesus has a calling and a capacity to recognize evil and falsehood and free people from it, which is a pretty audacious claim to make about what his ministry is going to be. What an amazing and important skill to have. Because maybe you have noticed people don't always tell the truth or do the right thing, right? We live in the midst of so many lies. Lies about ourselves, whether we matter, and what makes us matter. Lies about each other and how we ought to be treating each other. Lies that come from within us and lies that we are taught by other people. Too often we are convinced by these lies and put our trust in people and in systems that keep us divided and suppressed and broken. Take some time later today and make a list of the lies that you have been taught, or the ones maybe you still believe and are fighting with in your mind sometimes in the background. There are lies all around us. And Jesus is a truth teller for the ages. He shares wisdom and asks questions that challenge the powerful people and ideas and systems in his day. He uses his power to oppose poverty and violence and bias and colonization and occupation by telling us all this very simple truth that we are all precious children of God and that we are made to love God and one another. Jesus offers us a liberation that continues to free us thousands of years later and thousands of miles away. His healing is sometimes physical, and it is also spiritual, and it is also political. You can't have one without having them all. So, we keep telling stories about Jesus, what he said and what he did, who he was and what happened to him, and how God's power kept rising in him and the people around him despite all the powers arrayed against them. And we keep sharing the stories that Jesus knew and treasured, the scriptures that formed his faith. All of this is recorded in something that looks like a book, but is actually a library, our Bible. This precious collection of texts, like the voice of Jesus, is a tool for love and liberation. And every year we put it in the hands of our children, this book that is often censored and banned. We put it in the hands of our children because it's one of the most important things that we can give to them. So I'd like to invite up the third graders who are receiving a Bible this morning.